Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show In Focus, where today we're going to talk about Indian Railways and its transformation. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi flagged off India's 15th Vande Bharat Express train on Wednesday. This train will run between Ajmer and Delhi Cantt. The first Vande Bharat Express train was flagged off on 15th of February 2019 on the New Delhi Kanpur-Allahabad-Varanasi route. From a small runway of approximately 34 kilometers from Bori Bunder to Thane in 1853 to more than 68,000 route kilometers comprising of broad gauge, meter gauge and narrow gauge as well. Indian Railways has undergone a huge transformation in this time frame. According to the National Rail Plan, that is NRP for India 2030, the aim is to create a future-ready railway system by 2030. The NRP is aimed to formulate strategies based on both operational capacities and commercial policy initiatives as well to increase modal share of the railways in freight to 45%. As part of the National Rail Plan, Vision 2024 has also been launched for accelerated implementation of certain critical projects by 2024, which includes, among others, 100% electrification and multi-tracking of congested routes as well. Now, 2.40 lakh crore rupees was allocated for the Indian Railways in this year's budget, which is approximately 9 times of the outlay made in 2013-14 for Indian Railways. Railways is also one of the key drivers of PM Gati Shakti scheme and the National Logistics Policy. So today we will take a detailed look at various aspects of the transformation of Indian Railways and how it is on the path to become future ready. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have in the studio Mr. Sudhendu Jyoti Sinha is joining us. He's Advisor, Transport and Infrastructure Connectivity with Niti Aayog. We also have with us Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee, Consulting Editor with the Business Standard, and Mr. Ghanshyam Singh, a Member, Traction of the Railway Board, is also with us. We are also joined by Mr. Satish Kumar Vij. He's a former member of the Railway Board. Welcome to you as well, Mr. Vij, to this particular show at Sansad TV. Let me begin with you, Mr. Sinha. And let's first start by understanding a bit more about the journey of railways. I made a slight reference about, from 1800s to now, from 34 kilometers to more than 68,000 route kilometers. That's a huge transformation.
Yes, it has been really transformational. And if I try to see this span of time that you have mentioned, in the last 8 to 10 years, it has been all the more orbital, if I put it this way. So, over the years, what we see is, especially in this particular time span that I am mentioning, there's a complete change in the mindset of railways. So, initially it was just freight that was the prime focus. Now, from freight, it has moved on to passengers, and more to, an approach is there that it is a kind of giving the service that becomes all the more important. That is what the approach is. And you did mention about the budget. Budget has shown complete confidence on the railways and the priority that they have laid out for themselves, that within a year they have to be spending around, say, 2,40,000 crore rupees. And if you translate it, in a day it comes to almost 670 crore rupees. That is, every crore rupee has to be spent in 2.5 minutes, that too for capital expenditure, capacity building, those kind of things basically. So this is what the approach is. Okay. And this is what we expect that it is going to pull off. Railways, make it future ready and make it all the more great. That is what we want to. Okay.
So an apt summary of what we've seen, what is being done and what we are likely to see in the future as well. Mr. Ghanshyam, I'd like to bring you in here as well. In your association with Indian Railways and also prior to that as well, if you look at this transformational period and this entire exercise of where we were, that is the Indian Railways, and where we've reached, how would you summarize this journey and the targets which have been set?
Vishal, a little correction. I am also a former Railway Board member, member Traction, retired in 2019. And let me share with you my experience of last 37 years of my service. You see, under the leadership of our honorable, glorious Prime Minister, there is a total transformation, and I have experienced from 2014 to 2019. We were struggling with the availability of resources. Can you imagine a large number of projects having allocation of 1 rupees for the year? As a result, no work progress. There is a time overrun, cost overrun. However, under the direction of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Suresh Prabhu, unlocked the resources, and now it incumbent came upon the railway workforce to give the results. And there is the changing scenario starts. Earlier, for example, we used to have 1,000 kilometer electrification in a year. The first year, 2018-19 financial year, railway did 4,000 kilometers, 400% increase. And thereafter, there is no looking back. 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and in the current year, whole of the Indian railways will be electrified. Now, Vande Bharat trains are pure indigenous, make in India, and a pride for the India to be produced. And I am told that many foreign countries are looking for import of this Vande Bharat Express in their then Vande metro trains, fueled by hydrogen fuel. Let me tell you, this NRP aims net zero carbon railway by 2030. And Indian Railway is transforming, is accepting the challenge by way of solarization, by way of mission electrification, I have told already, hydrogen fuel cell, then wind power harnessing, and many more. Regenerative locomotives, regenerative EMU MEMUs, and HOGs. All these are reducing the fuel burden, fossil fuel burden on the country.
So that's very important aspect, the net zero emission target and electrification, solarization as well. We'll dwell more upon that. But Shubhmoy, you keep a close look on the numbers, and when we're looking deeper into what the allocation is, the kind of money which has been spent in the past years as well, vis-a-vis the money which was allocated, and this time around the capital expenditure outlay, as Mr. Sinha was referring to. Where do we stand in these numbers? What's the most important aspect to look for in these numbers?
In fact, Sudhanshu made a very interesting point. He said railway seems to have developed a confidence that they can handle big numbers. That's pretty important. For years, and this is not just recent, but what's happened is that the railways, in everything that it did, whether it's freight, whether it's in terms of passenger, whether in terms of passenger amenities, or even in terms of looking at itself, railways was sort of, always ceding space to the newer guys. That narrative seems to be changing, and I would give quite a bit of credit to the new railway minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, for having sort of, brought a bit of spunk into the entire thought process, and that's very important. It's not that the railway didn't have the engineers, didn't have the planners, didn't have the specialists, but railway seems to have a very shortage of confidence. That confidence seems to be coming back. It's not surprising that there's a lot of discussion on Vande Bharat trains. More than what the trains are, and they are very good trains, and the engineers here will say how good they are, but more than that, it's a feeling that, we can produce something which can actually be looked up to. We are not copying. We are not just simply picking up something which comes from abroad or somewhere and then putting it onto our system.
Indigenous design as well.
Indigenous design, and also, like, remember the passenger coaches are also indigenous design. But the point is that you've got to feel that this is, state of the art. We want to push it up across.
Okay.
That's an important thing.
Taking the quality up to the next level,
Taking
one
the
notch
quality
higher.
up to the level and believing that. And I think there's lots of things that have been happening. I suspect the best days of railways are ahead of it. The railways will be clear. I mean, they seem to have integrated themselves. For instance, a very major change that has happened is in terms of the management personnel. It's now seamless. It's now practically one service. Now, all of these things do take time to play their roles out.
Okay.
But the very fact that of the past few years, you are getting more positive news from railways than any negative news just tells you, including the fact that this year, which a sector which I track very closely, coal freight, railways has actually been able to ramp up its capacity to send coal rakes across. Rakes across to send coal to lots of power stations. Now those are some things which makes you feel that yes, this is an organization which is sort of thinking what's next to do.
Okay.
So I think that's an important part to understand about the railways.
Okay, planning ahead and implementing that plan as well. Mr. Sinha, a lot of focus seems to be there on self-reliance, on Make in India as well. So if you could take us through, some of the initiatives by the railways vis-a-vis Make in India part, because Vande Bharat is one aspect, Vande Bharat Express trains, but apart from that, there are many other, aspects of the Make in India initiative.
Exactly. So like, why only Vande Bharat, that is a coaching stock in addition to the goods stock, you see, and in addition to the signaling components, for example, sensors, for example, number of areas are there where where localization and value addition through, what is indigenous, that is being taken forward. And it has got to be, because until your supply chains are staying outside your control, until you are, depending on something else, that won't serve the purpose. What is needed and what is being done as of now is that the best of any exchange of technology necessarily has to be that what we call transfer of technology protocol. That is inbuilt into it. Not that we don't go around for the best of the global technologies, we do. But once it is understood that this is good for the country, it is subsequently customized, internalized, and then gradually with prototypes, development and things like that, it is taken forward.
Okay.
So value addition is something that is very, very, profoundly seen today in the entire manufacturing process of the units which are involved in the railway manufacturing facilities.
Okay. Ghanshyamji, you were earlier talking about, the net zero emission part.
Yeah.
100% electrification is one of those critical projects under Vision 2024, which is to be achieved. And I guess if you look at the numbers, most of it has already been done as well. Solarization also.
Right.
So the question here is that how's railway going about it? That's one part. And two, is there a lot of private partnership involved, or is just the railways on its own which is moving ahead on this path and achieving those targets?
You see, there are the two parts of it. One is the technology development, and that too indigenous technology development. Railway on its own have been able to successfully develop and demonstrate by practical implementation of the project. One is in Veena and other is Diwana. Veena is in Madhya Pradesh and Diwana is in Haryana. 2 megawatt solar power plant each, which are generating energy and feeding it to railway traction lines. Thereby, which means that railway trains are being operated in those zones during daytime by solar power.
Okay.
Now, next part is proliferation. Proliferation, certainly, when I was in the board, the scheme of things were that it will be through a public-private partnership. There is no investment by the government. PPA would be signed by the probable developers for next 25 years at a very, very competitive cost. And railway would provide their land parcels which are not going to be used in near future, or even when they are required for the railway's purpose, those solar panels could be relocated.
Okay.
And you see, the dream was that along the railway track, there are land and huge land available. To tell you the number, the railway land available along the railway track have got a potential of 20 gigawatt peak solar panel installation.
Okay.
Which means if we do that and take the help of battery storage or any other kind of storage, that project itself can make the whole Indian Railway energy needs, it can cater to that.
Okay.
So, in both the way, it has to be a public-private partnership, and technology development. As far as developmental phase is concerned, you will appreciate that private industry may not be grown enough to invest in the newer technologies, but once the technology is demonstrated, now it has to be proliferated through public-private partnership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That takes care into account, how the private industry can also be a part of all these initiatives. Now, Shubhmoy, I'd like to bring you on the Make in India part here, which Sinha was referring to even earlier. Mr. Ghanshyam was also pointing that out. And from Make in India, I'm looking at a larger concept here, larger aspect here. That is, how much of a potential do you see vis-a-vis the export potential for all these efforts which are put in by railways to become self-reliant, to make in India? Vande Bharat Express trains is one example, as Ghanshyamji was pointing out, that perhaps there is some interest which is being shown by some countries to acquire these trains. In addition to that, maybe other elements as well. But how much of a potential does there lie in the railways sector when we are looking at the export part?
One of the things that the railways will have to look at, and that's not something that the railways particularly will be good at, in the sense is export of heavy engineering sort of stuff. And we are talking typically about the south countries, will also need a financial heft to be provided by the government of India. Things like letters of credit and things and all that. Now, at this current stage, railways cannot provide that sort of support to countries which would want to import in. Typically, railway or that sort of heavy engineering stuff, when it gets exported, there's always a financial package that goes with it. Which says that this is that is supposed to be developed as a part of the export package. So I would say that the export packaging is a possibility. It will happen. But let's look at something which is much more interesting, which is you're talking about the development of railways. And probably lots of people who don't even remember that the electric traction in India came at the same time as in Japan. SNF Railways France in 1950s, late 50s, actually had invited India and Japan to learn the electric technology, which at the time France was spearheading. Our engineers, their engineers, they all sat together. Within about 5 or 6 years, Japan introduced bullet train for their Tokyo Olympics. We sat behind with our steam engines. Our steam engines were phased out after having seen the electric engines. Steam engines were phased out by late 70s. In fact, Antim Sitara, the last steam engine that Indian Railways produced, came out in 1969 or 70. So you can imagine how much of technological backwardness thought was built into the entire railway system. We had the possibilities at the time.
But that is undergoing a lot of change.
Now, what's happening is that idea that we need to be behind has changed. That's why I was saying this is a thought change transformation which is happening, which is the very big transformation. Railways in India is not just railways running on track. The numbers are good. And in fact, I'm deliberately not getting the numbers. But a very big important thing is a lot of Indians look at what's changing in India through the prism of the railways. The railway stations, the railway trains, the railway underpasses, the flyover, the overbridges,
the railway timetable, the railway safety mechanism as well.
Even the food that is given on railways goes into the concept of people thinking. There are a number of people who actually, are fond of, taking visuals of railway trains there are railway clubs. For years, railways couldn't actually capitalize on that. It is now, I suspect, what's happening is that the railways is recapturing part of it.
Okay.
And that I think is a very major significant change that's happening.
Very interesting way of looking at this entire thing in terms of change in the thought process, capitalizing on its goodwill as well, which has been built over the years and is further improving onwards, and then again focusing on technology. All these things will dwell more onto that. But let me bring in Mr. Satish Kumar Vij as well. He's with us. Mr. Vij, how would you look at not only the journey as we've been talking about, but also the future prospects for Indian Railways?
You see, railways have did quite well in launching the dedicated freight corridor in time, and now we have added quite a lot of capacity, because so far railways has been having a large capacity constraint. The emphasis on doublings and treblings and such lines addition on the golden quadrilateral has been quite successful and very appropriate. Now, it is perhaps the first time that by the end of this year, we will have more capacity than what traffic is being offered to us. So, having done that and having been pursuing now some more freight corridors, I think capacity constraints will go. Now, what is left out is to improve the capacity further, even by advanced signaling, telecommunications. So technology partners could be brought in to induct the technology, and on performance base, they could be paid monies, and thereafter those technologies could be absorbed into the railways also. But all this is okay, but we are now facing a large growth in the road network, a large competition.
Okay.
So our marketing efforts, our pricing efforts, because so far we have subsidized passenger losses by freight indices. Our freight tariff indices are perhaps one of the highest in the world. That makes our cost of production very high, which should now be controlled also. When we are talking of logistics cost being brought down from 15 to 8%, so this is one area. The efficiencies in railways should achieve a lower freight traffic also. The losses in passenger traffic should come down, that is true. And the expenditure, what is planned in development of stations by railways' own money,
Okay.
I am not able to see the good part in that. Why should railways be spending their own money for station developments? I know there could be contractual problems when long leases are there. But those are problems to be tackled, and not just spend the railways money over that kind of work.
Okay.
This is what I would suggest, what has happened and what could happen in future.
Okay. Interesting viewpoint there on the freight and passenger aspect as well, Mr. Vij, and we'll dwell more onto that. I would definitely like to bring in Mr. Sinha and Mr. Ghansham and Shubhmoy also on that part. But before that, let's take a short break, and on the other side, we'll talk about these two issues and also the focus on operational capacities and the commercial policies as well, as to how both these can be brought together in terms of formulating long-term strategies also. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So today we're talking about the transformation of Indian Railways, what lies ahead for Indian Railways, also how will it become future ready, various policies in place, various plans in place as well. We're trying to understand what those policies are, how those plans will be put into motion, implemented as well. Before we went into the break, we were talking about, Mr. Vij rather was referring to the passenger and freight segment as well. Mr. Sinha, I'd like to bring you in here, as you're pointing out earlier, that from freight, the focus was shifted on passenger as well. But if you look at the NRP, looks like the focus again is sort of, sought to be equally divided between passenger and freight, because it talks about increasing the modal share to up to around 45% by 2030, if I'm not wrong. Question is, how will that happen? also, how will the this divided attention between passenger and freight take place in terms of the funds, in terms of manpower as well? How will it work?
You know, you rightly said the approach is, in fact, we are missing out one important perspective on it, which is that in this entire, narrative of technology, focus on passenger and freight and capacity augmentation, one major golden, I would say, indicator that the present dispensation has decided and is pursuing is that of the inclusive and equity approach of railways. Northeast, for example, either to, those areas which were not connected. Arunachal, for example, the entire mountainous arc, for example, these are the areas where railways are going in, making their footprints felt over there and just connecting them to the national ministry. And I can't tell you what a massive multiplier, economic multiplier, it has been able to bring about. Not only in the economic area, but also in social areas, for example. Areas which were hitherto a couple of trains maybe, where the augmentation has taken place, gauge conversion has taken place. Those areas from, you see, now they are the ones which are gradually connected to the urban centers. Their products can easily move on. People can move on for the purpose of higher education, medical, tourism, and so many other areas. What I'm trying to emphasize is that this is the inclusive character that ought to be appreciated to the best possible of it.
Okay.
For example, they have identified that which are the districts where the population is 50,000 plus, but yet not connected with railways. And they are focusing on that. Similarly, in the hill areas, naturally, construction in these areas are very, very difficult. But they are going ahead with it. And that is what, makes Indian Railways, what we always say, true lifeline of the nation.
Okay.
So probably that is there. As far as the creating a balance between passenger and freight is there, let me put it this way. Now the focus is on the customers. So it is the freight customer. So the cargo terminals are being improved upon. Digital enablements are being given. Those single point of contacts are being developed in freight area. Similarly for the passengers also. A lot of, digital, a person sitting in somewhere remote corner of the country can think of today, booking his ticket, getting it confirmed altogether, and then move on.
Okay.
So these are what is happening there. So I must appreciate and sing for it. We must, it gives tremendous pride in saying that this is the railway which is not elitist, class-oriented. This is the railway that we are standing by.
But how do we set out to achieve that target of 45% modal share as far as freight is concerned by 2030? That's really important from the point of view of earning revenue as well, and from the point of view of larger economic impact it has.
Agreed. So that, of course, there are, for that also railway has taken an action. They have charted out a plan also. So maybe business intelligence unit, you will have to reach out to the customers. You have to rationalize your freight structures also. You have to try to provide them end-to-end support, end-to-end connectivity. Not that the first and the last miles are left out and it is only the middle ones which you are serving ahead with. So that is why you see that in this budget also, the first and the last mile connectivity that is being provided. For freight customers, they are being approached and gradually that push is giving. A lot of thinking is also going on to rationalize the freight processes, freight structures, so that people are attracted towards it.
Okay. Shubhmoy, how much of or rather how important, significant do you believe this aspect is? Increasing the modal share of freight, as you were earlier also referring to, that increase is gradually being witnessed also. And I'm looking at it not only in terms of revenues for the railways, the money which can be spent somewhere else as well to further increase railways footprint or increase passenger amenities or services also. But the economic multiplier, as I was pointing out earlier, railways is also a very critical part of the PM Gati Shakti mission, the logistics mission as well.
Yeah. And also, if you look at the fact that if we are looking at net zero, and we are looking at pushing more traffic off the road onto the trains. That definitely is very important. But, and that's a very important but, despite everything, I do not think that we'll be there. For the simple reason, and that's a very major thing, and that doesn't matter, because nowhere in the world has railways been able to claw back that amount of freight traffic? So it's not a problem for Indian Railways. It is simply because of the nature of the beast that is traffic. Container traffic, especially the white goods traffic, doesn't lend itself very comfortably to the railway sort of traffic treatment that it does. You know, there's lots of missing link that comes in. Even after a freight has reached a particular parcel, a particular godown, after that it has to be transported on. There are a lot of those sort of stuff that comes along. But it doesn't matter. Even if railways is able to claw back at distinct, you know, we lose nothing by thinking that we haven't reached 45. What will be important is that we claw back some of the traffic. That itself will give a huge boost to the railways.
Okay.
And I think that is what is the important part. So setting a target is definitely important, but the very fact that the railways is looking at clawing back in a very, very purposive way. And a very important part of that which is coming along, which will be very important, which Mr. Satish Kumar also pointed out to, is the addition of the extra line.
Extra lines.
You know, this extra line is something which, I mean, whatever railways is doing is today restricted by the fact that it doesn't have the lanes on which to run the trains.
Indeed, that's the next point I was coming to, and wanted to bring Ghanshyamji on this. You know, decongestion of the existing routes as well, putting in place extra tracks also. This is all interconnected. If you're able to do this, you'll be able to perhaps, you know, take on more load, be it freight or be it passenger traffic as well.
You see, in a larger plan, railway has gone capacity building in multi ways. One is the doubling, tripling of lines. Second is use of technology. I'll again remind our honorable, glorious Prime Minister says that leverage the technology and indigenous technology. They have gone for improved signaling system, TCAS, TPWS, and latest is Kavach, in which you must have seen in the newspaper, the two trains came in front of each other and they stopped.
Okay.
In one train, our honorable railway minister Vaishnavji was there. In other engine, from other side, the then chairman railway board was there. And that was the confidence displayed on the indigenous technology. Even the ETCS level 2, which is a European technology, on that no one can have that courage that two very, very VIP and dignitaries will come in front of each other, believing the technology.
Okay.
And it was demonstrated. Now it is being proliferated. And decongestion by creating additional infrastructure and by creating technology, monitoring the trains through digital medias, running them on a latest state of art technology, locomotives and EMU, their control systems. This would certainly going to bring down a revolutionary change
Okay.
in the railways. And personally, given to me, this 45% of rail coefficient is not a far-fetched dream.
Okay.
In the past, in 50s, the Indian Railways, were moving 88% rail coefficient. Of course, magnitude was slowly and slowly, railway went in the back stage and road took over. Today, we are competing with the road, but I would sincerely wish that road and rail should supplement and complement each other. They should not be competitive, because that won't be in the interest of the country and our people.
Okay. Okay. So the complementary approach there, but both of you mentioned the technology part as well. Mr. Sinha was also earlier referring to. I'd like to bring in Mr. Vij here. Mr. Vij, in terms of leveraging technology, utilization of the tech which we have, developing new technologies, in terms of various operational aspects of Indian Railways, where do we stand, and what are the avenues which you believe have larger potential when we're talking about leveraging technologies?
See, over the decades gone by, technology absorption has been very slow. Lately, I do agree, like Mr. Gansham said, this Kavach and such things have happened in replacement of ETCS2. And now this Vande Bharat, particularly a great thrust is being given in train sets and better acceleration, deceleration. But I added on a comment earlier in my while I spoke to bring in technology partners and ask them to improve performance and pay them according to the improved performance. That is what is required through signaling and telecommunication efforts. Of course, locomotion was earlier a handicap. Adequate locomotion did not exist, and perhaps in very small sectors in the country, particularly in the East Coast and the Central India, locomotion is perhaps a handicap even today. But solving those things is what will improve the capacity. There was a thought about 7-8 years back to enhance the average speed by 25 kilometers per hour of the goods trains.
Okay.
I am not aware how much has been achieved, but certainly with things like Vande Bharat, average speed of passenger trains, I mean coaching trains, is getting improved. But to aim for technologies to improve on the existing system, speeds to 180 kmph, I think is not a appropriate pursuit. Average speed improvement should be a proper pursuit, not the maximum speed.
Okay.
Now, while talking about 45% share of the railways in the freight being carried, yes, for the nation it is very, very important. But I will give in maybe a radical proposal. Maybe some of you will find it difficult to digest. Why not legislate that bulk movements are like coal, iron ore, other minerals, etc. Beyond a couple of 100 kilometers, they will necessarily move by rail and not by road.
Okay.
Because that is what is the railways, I would say, advantage, and that is what is the good the nation requires in terms of pursuing, zero carbon footprints and those things.
Okay.
So there is a direction which needs to be chosen for such achievements also.
Okay. Okay. That's perhaps very interesting suggestion. Though, as Mr. Vij himself said, maybe a radical one at that in terms of legislation, bringing in legislation on that aspect. But going back to the other point which Mr. Vij made in terms of how much of a participation of the private industry can there be? And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Sinha, here. This partnership with the private industry or the role of the private industry in all these aspects of the transformation which we're talking about. How much of the scope is there for the private sector, and also is the private sector ready for playing that important part?
So there is a tremendous scope for that. But the point is that when you are trying to create, you have to create the enablers basically, so that private people are ready to chip in, to put in, invest their money, and of course the risks are equally shared. So everything depends upon the structuring of the contract, the PPP arrangement that you are trying to think about, or maybe operational arrangement, for example. That is where the rub lies. How you create it, that is basically, you see, it has to be attractive. It has to be attractive for them. It has to be a kind of confidence building for them also, because they are putting in their risk. If we have to go forward, we can't be setting aside these private people. Private investment, not only investment, their management, their monitoring systems, their commitment, their work culture, all of them have to be integrated into it. So we have to kind of create the enablers. I do see a lot of scope for them, and they are gradually coming into the play. Maybe initially one has to think of creating viability gap funding kind of instruments for them, but then finally they have to be made a partner of it. And this is what again one of the transformational approaches are, where we are taking them, the private people, as a co-stakeholder, as a partner to the national progress, rather than someone who is just trying to put in the money and draw out the best out of it and then leave away. No, that is the trust that is there. That is why I told you that today, by default, the system is on trust until it is proved otherwise. That is why those enablers are being created. Yes.
Okay. Shubhmoy, your view there on the role of the private sector in all these steps which are to be taken by the railways, and there is no dearth of money.
Absolutely. There's no dearth of money. And right now, from what we have heard from the railway minister, I suspect what he would be bringing along very soon is something like the institutional structure Mr. Sinha was talking about, essentially a regulatory authority. You need a regulatory authority for the sector. It's too big now, and it's going to be even more bigger. So regulatory authority which will run, and there's under it there will be the railways running probably the infrastructure. The entire infrastructure, which is because that is a national asset. Whereas the running of the what is called the locomotives and everything else, those will have to be then taken over by competing companies. And I see no reason why they can't, because after all, everyone will be in the business of maximizing profit. And sure enough, that is what will happen. So we will ensure, just as we are talking about that there should be rail lines going to the distant corners, that the railways will obviously be ensuring. But in terms of pricing, it will be set by the regulator, whereas the running of the locomotives, that will partially be, there will be a good government companies, obviously, that will be first there. In fact, there's already been plans initially. Now, there's also plans to have passenger trains to be taken on. Initially, there were not too many bidders, and that's not surprising because lots of things which are the missing links had not yet been settled. Now, as the sector becomes much more steady, earning people come in. The higher class passengers, they had been deserting the railways for long distance trains. Now, what happens is for the short haul, interestingly, probably the flights which are taken over may actually be replaced by the railways, and that's also environmentally good. Lots of countries in Europe are actually also looking at that terms. So there are a lot of those possibilities which the railways will be able to ensure. And I suspect the building blocks that have been put into place will ensure that railways actually become more railways by ceding space to private sector.
Ceding space to private sector. Now, that's very important. Another aspect of this public-private partnership, and you were earlier mentioning some of the examples, in terms of technology, when we look at how much of a scope is there in terms of technology? Is there a scope for the private sector to pitch in? And yes, if there is a scope, then how is that likely to happen?
Vishal, there is a huge scope and sky is the limit. But as Sudhendu was telling, that we have to put enabler in place. Today, private sector is not coming forward. Okay, I have come with this technology, proven technology. Yeah, I have developed this technology. They are just not coming with the railways. So, win-win situation kind of thing, enabler has to be put in place. And secondly, I have seen, some of the industry houses wanted to create a captive rail network, but they were not allowed between port and their plant. See, this kind of enabling we have to give so that there are private railway networks. You see, if you go into the history of the Indian railways, they all were created by private parties only. Great Indian Peninsular Railway, East Indian Railways, all were private, Baroda Railway and whatnot. So like that we should allow now, instead of inhibiting them, restricting them, we should allow them. You come with us, you are a partner to us, and develop the technology also, demonstrate it, and then we also absorb it. We support it.
So perhaps, this becomes a part of the issues to be discussed of the enabling mechanism which Mr. Sinha was referring to. Now that we are nearing to the end of this discussion, to summarize it, Mr. Sinha, what are the key focus areas for the short term and long term for Indian Railways? That's one. And two, as an end user, if I have to look at it from an end user's perspective, what is it that the end user should expect from Indian Railways in, again, the short term and long term as well?
So the priority wise, if I see, the first priority is that of capacity augmentation. We have to go in a big way. And if you recollect, then from the same place when we were in a congratulating railways and the post budget for getting such a huge amount, of course now the euphoria is gradually settling down. It's for them to work. From the user's perspective, it is the quality of service that we require. No, it has to be world's best. If the infrastructure is best, if the commitment of the government is so clear, profound, emphatic, why not the service of the same level? That is what the expectation of freight customer, or maybe it's a passenger, whoever it is. That is what the expectation is. And of course, with such a huge amount and the priority right before the railways, it's time for Team Railways, Team Indian Railways, to start the work, deliver it, and by the time we are, coming again on 31st of March next year, we should be congratulating them. And then, of course, government will be all the more keen to give them more money to deliver more.
Okay, yes. and as we started, there is no dearth of money. We started with those numbers, those figures as well. Shubhoy, final comments from you on challenges which lie ahead to achieve all those things which Mr. Sinha was referring to, or for the entire, hour-long discussion which we have had, all the panelists were pointing out to. What are the key challenges which we are looking at? Because, of course, if we have to plan it out, think out of the box and transform, the transformation is the part here which we're talking about. There will be challenges.
There will be challenges. And one of the most important thing will be for the railways management, and whatever way you call them, not to push the burden onto the non-executive. Essentially, railways needs to let go. Conquer is something which the government wants to privatize. Strategic disinvestment. It's been hanging fire for quite some time. And the reasons are fairly obviously known. There are things which railways need to cede space for the private sector companies to bid adequately for Conquer. The government is basically saying that, yes, I am giving you the money, you show me the results. For that results to show, railways is changing, but the biggest challenge, I would say, Vishal, is for changing mindset within the railways top level for accepting, and by top level I mean the officers, to accept that we have to be a part of a competitive landscape and not use a monopoly power to perpetuate a fiefdom or something. This is very important. This has been very big challenge which most ministers have faced, and it's now the time is that we get a move on this thing, because because there's really no room for excuses now. And that I think, so because the people want it, they are getting it, they can see the changes happening, so why not at more levels?
Okay, so basically it's not just that, you've been given the money, you spend it wisely, but also bring that transformational change in the entire process of thought, in the entire process of planning, execution, and the enabling mechanism which all of you were referring to when we're talking about involvement of the private sector, more involvement rather of the private sector. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha, Shubhoy as well, Mr. Ghanshyam, and Mr. Wij also for sharing your views and insight. As our panelists were pointing out, it is indeed a very glorious journey which Indian Railways has had so far. There have been a lot of changes, but now is the time for bringing in that transformational change on which the work is being done. Focus areas very clearly looking at passenger amenities, increasing the contribution as far as freight traffic is also concerned. And let's not forget, technological developments and Make in India part of it. We'll bring you more details as far as Indian Railways is concerned and come back again with a different topic as well. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television.